it's very easy to think of mindfulness and developing awareness as a kind of private individual process. That's okay. That's one side of it. But the whole journey of the spiritual life, I believe, is finding more and more how we're just not as separate as we think we are.
Together, we go out there. Together, we begin to share.
Good to see you back here on the Pulse. I'm Patricia Falco Beccali, your host. And today we're going to talk about original love. We're going to talk to Henry Shukman. He's a poet and a Zen teacher, Zen Master. We'll talk about his trajectory, his evolution, and becoming a Zen Master later on in the show. But most importantly, the focus will be on his book, Original Love, the 4 Ins on the Path of Awakening. And just as I mentioned the book, Henry also just released an app, and we will talk about the app and where to find the app, as well as other sources of information of Henry. Henry, I am so happy to have you on the show. Thoroughly enjoyed your book and can't wait to really get into the nitty-gritty of your journey.
Patricia, thank you very much for having me on the show. And yeah, delighted to explore see where we go together in this time.
Towards awakening.
Yeah,
Towards
exactly.
awakening. I hope so. Well, before we get into really the details of your book, a very practical manual really for people to get into the concept of meditation, potentially awakening. Let's first of all talk about the title, Original Love. You know, when Beth Grossman, who is a fantastic by now friend of mine, but also represents you as an artist, as a poet and writer, especially for this book, I thought original love. Okay, let me dig into this. And then I looked at my research. I understand that you were trying to have it offered as an alternative to the original sin. Let's start with the concept of original sin and what it actually means, what is meant in the past, and what do you think it still means in today's society?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I think it's very important. You know, a lot of people in our world suffer with a sense of shame, of a deep unworthiness that becomes a kind of unexamined central feature of their life. This is well documented in a lot of psychological and psychotherapeutic research, that the sense of unworthiness is a common problem, that I'm not good enough. And it's a particularly strong Western thing. You know, there's a famous story that the Dalai Lama was visiting with American Buddhist teachers sometime in the 70s or 80s. And one of them asked, what do you do about self-loathing, self-hatred? And the Dalai Lama huddled with his translators to try to understand what they were asking about. And he came back and said, we don't know what you mean. What is that? And that was an example of how the strength of this idea of I'm not good enough is in Western culture. And if we look at why is it here, you know, what has happened to us that we carry that? One of the origins seems to be the Judeo-Christian tradition's idea that we're all kind of sinful and bad deep down. And, you know, you can trace it to the Garden of Eden story, where, you know, Adam and Eve did this terrible sinful thing of exploring the garden and tasting this apple that they'd been told, or whatever the fruit was, that they'd been told not to eat. You know, well, they're curious human beings. And actually, there are other versions of that story that are not Judeo-Christian in other traditions, where it's a good thing that they explored and wanted to have knowledge and wanted to understand things better. But anyway, in the Judeo-Christian tradition, it's like a bad thing they did that has marked humanity ever since as sinful from birth. And it's a terrible idea, I think. It's a very cruel idea. And somehow it's it's, you know, it's at odds with the better messages of religion, that, you know, we're beloved, you know, not hateful and wrong, you know. So I wanted to really bring out what I believe is the central beauty of meditation and mindfulness. Yeah, it's about stress reduction. It's about switching off all our worry and finding there's another kind of peacefulness that we can have access to. But deep down, it's really about finding a, a love in the heart of our own nature.
And we will talk about love and mindfulness, and the deep meaning, or in the meaning you try also to portray in the book, which I think is very stimulating and far from what the conventional idea is. Just as an add-on to the original sin, first of all, this is a secular communication conversation between you and I. We are not here preaching or on a mission or on a potential, you know, cruise. But I think this question of original sin, if I look at today's society, I wonder to what extent in our Western rich society it really is kind of the upbringing, potentially the religious upbringing, or the mere confrontation of everybody's life seeming to be so full, so fun, so abundant, so perfect, and beautiful, and at the same time, you know, us potentially consuming it through social media, technology, etc., feeling inadequate wherever we look, on every level we look.
Yeah, I think that's right. That there's a lot of factors. I mean, by the way, I'm an atheist, just FYI, you know, but I still believe in, you know, my own experience has shown me that deep down there's a love, you know, that's unconditional. But I agree, there's a lot of factors that are societal as well, and you know, there's a whole thing about the work ethic in the West is so strong. And if I'm not performing well enough, that's a sign that I'm not good enough. And if I don't measure up in the beauty of my lifestyle with exactly all these displays on social media, again, I'm not good enough. There's a lot of factors that contribute. But I think the key thing is like, okay, you know, maybe I do want to earn more money. Maybe I do want to have more holidays in more glamorous places or something. But that doesn't relate to my worth. You know, my deep down, I have unconditional okayness. You know, and I'm actually a new friend of mine who's just a marvelous teacher, Tara Brack. She talks about a trance of unworthiness that she sees in many students she works with, that it's kind of like a unexamined assumption of being unworthy, you know. And so I think it's really good to call it out, you know, to name it, that yeah, there's a kind of enchantment almost we can fall into, a feeling not good enough, that can be a subtle underlying assumption.
Mm.
And it's so good to name it, I think, and to call it out and say, well, wait, what about if there's an alternative that could be like an assumption of okayness? I am good enough. You know, what if that could be our baseline?
Mm.
You know, how different then it would be to look on social media and say, oh yeah, I'm happy my friend's having a nice holiday, you know, or has found a delicious new restaurant they love, you know. I'm happy for them.
Yeah, I think what I like about this, and also what your friend said about the trance of unworthiness, and I wanted to ask you about, you know, today's zeitgeist and how that actually falls into what you're trying to communicate. And it seems to resonate with my question I wanted to ask you about that zeitgeist, and the zeitgeist of, you know, needing to thrive and to strive has always been there, but as you did, you actually felt better about yourself. And today, it seems that this is not necessarily correlated. Just because you have more, you have achieved more, doesn't mean that you actually feel more. So worth is not equal to worthiness. This is what I hear you saying. And that we have lost that, hey, whether I have or I don't have, I'm still worthy, because having might be limited to physical, not to the metaphysical, for example, to what you can develop intrinsically.
Yes, thank you. That's a great point. Like, I think, the way I see it these days is like, yeah, intrinsically, we already have all we need. There's a, so I feel a lot of this journey of meditation and mindfulness is not about developing stuff. It's actually about finding what's already here. So, like, there's a kind of what they call mindfulness, is actually, which is a kind of awareness that's very open, and it's not judging and it's not judgmental. It's just open. That awareness is actually something we all already have. And when we find it, we also find that that kind of awareness already feels good enough. It doesn't feel unworthy. It brings with it a sense that, yeah, I am worthy, and not for specific reasons, just intrinsically. And I agree with you that that correlates also with this thing we've got in our culture, which is kind of never enough. However much it is, it could be more. It could be more. It could be more money. It could be more prestige. It could be more renown, and it could be more health. It could be more fitness. And we've got so many ways now that we turn it into numerical things. How many followers do I have? How many copies have I sold? How many reps have I done? How many times did I work out this week? How good are my numbers on sleep? It's like we turn it all into numbers. And of course, there's a positive side. It's great to be aspiring to kind of improve in certain areas, but not if that's linked to my worth. We want to be tasting this unconditional well-being, unconditional worth. I think it's really the secret to happiness, actually, is to find that, yeah, I want to work on my projects. I want to be improving in areas. I definitely want to be having better and better times in my relationships. And, that's all good. But it's coming from a place that already knows there is a kind of fundamental well-being, actually, that's not dependent on conditions and circumstances. And finding that is the key to I think, the true spiritual journey. Is, which it's a secular spiritual journey, not religious, not dogmatic, nothing to do with traditions of doctrines and stuff. It's our own thing, to find our own, I would call it belovedness. It's between me and this very moment.
And we'll get there, and we'll get there through these 4 ins or phases. We can translate them: mindfulness, support, absorption, loved absorption, and the jhana practice, and awakening. You're talking about this finding that we are deep down intrinsically okay. When I read that and when I listened to you, I go, it is about refinding. Because if we think about babies, right? Yes. I was okay as a baby. Big belly, not big belly, chubby legs, smeared all over, stinky, smelly, slept well, didn't sleep well, screaming, playing up. I was cool for myself, the blissfulness of being, still in paradise, because the first so many years, we're just not aware yet. Okay, we are not conscious, and then consciousness, conditioning, education kicks in and erodes this beautiful sense of we just are. We are
Yes.
here. Yeah. And so I just think it's kind of like a rediscovering journey rather than, hey, it's the first time you come across this and you have to kind of pull it out somewhere you've never had it. We did, didn't we?
We did. We did. I totally agree. We already had it. And actually, we already have it, but we do need to re-find it. I totally agree. And I think there's just a little subtle thing I'd say about it as well, is that when we re-find it as adults, it's kind of got an extra layer of beauty because we're aware of it. We know it's valuable now. As a baby, it just was what it was, you know. But now as an adult, we know that, yeah, there's suffering in this world. And to find something so beautiful that is unconditional, you know, that we can always tap into, even in times of suffering and living amid the suffering of the world. It's got an extra layer of beauty, I think, if
Yeah.
you know what I mean. I don't know quite how to express
No,
that.
absolutely. Because all of a sudden, what we rediscover falls into a context. And the context can be a social context, can be a traumatic context, it can be a, materialistic context. But all of a sudden you go like, oh, I'm now aware how good I can feel, how unguilty I can feel and okay with myself. And you are aware of it because you have context apart from, the consciousness of being an adult mind, with certain wisdoms already accumulated. Maybe
Yes.
this is why it's such a epiphany, even though it's something we already had.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Hey, I'm just getting this thought actually. I've just read you're in the land of deep psychology. I mean, Jung lived just up the road, right?
You
And
did, you did.
Switzerland has been a kind of hotbed of really amazing psychological discovery, you know. And so I'm realizing that you probably have absorbed some of that, and that's why you've got this very clear, insightful view on all this. Thank you, actually.
No, thank you. I
Really
mean,
like that.
coming from you, I'm like, wow, in awe. Thank you so much. But no, I think what we also want to do for our viewers and listeners, Henry, if you agree, let's have a look at the mission you embarked on with this book and really take our community through these 4 ins, and most importantly also why it matters today. Why is being mindful, why is that important or supported? Why is meditation the conduct, the linking
Yeah.
between what I am right now and where I could be or who I could be?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Let me say right off that um, the places that we can discover through meditation inside us are collective. So when we tap into any of them, and I lay it out as 4 main areas, and we'll get to that. But in each of them, it's a shared, collective, human property or quality, something we all have as a birthright. So I believe that at this time when there's a lot of divisiveness and a lot of strong attachment to positions, to opinions, it's even more helpful that many of us are finding our ways to a place of peace and love and openness and a wish to understand, because it really undercuts the oppositional politics, the divisiveness, and we've got evolutionary wiring to get very aggressive and to dehumanize other groups, to dehumanize other people. And so this, I think, really goes deeper than that, underneath that, to another kind of evolutionary inheritance, which is much more collective, cooperative. We totally know about caring. We totally know about sharing. It's deep in our DNA to care and to share and to love and to be in a place and a space of shared peace. It's something we're really good at as well. So I believe it's all the more important now that we cultivate access to those places. And here's the really cool thing. Like when I started meditating in my mid 20s, when I really needed it, I was suffering a lot, and I can go into that. But anyway, I was, many of us do. And meditation was my first key to unlocking the door to a path of healing. And, I know for others, it doesn't have to be meditation. It can be many other things. Yoga actually also was a thing I got into that really helped. And so was therapy that I got into, and I needed it. But it was meditation was my first door. It just opened the door a little bit. Oh my gosh, there's another way. There's something I can do that's totally different to the ways I'm trying to improve my life. I'm trying to get my career going the way I want. I'm trying to have relationships I want, and I'm trying to, but this is different. It's like, okay, there's something else I can do, which is about my basic aliveness, being alive, not doing, just being. And so that was a really helpful thing for me. And that's the first in my book. It's mindfulness. It's learning to come back, to disengage from all my planning and projects and scheming that I'm trying to figure things out, to disengage from all of that and just be. Now, that's, it's easy to say just be. It's not that easy, actually, because we've got a lot of attachment to doing, to figuring things out, to making things happen, to working on the externals of our life. And to learn to we don't have to stop doing that forever. We just see if we can stop for 5 minutes, put all that down and just be. It's so helpful. It's another way of receiving the gift of being alive, as I see it.
And to that point, mindfulness, because everybody says, okay, tell me about the how. Let's make this practical. And you speak about the breathing, but I guess this is where, people say, okay, I have to meditate. It takes time. I have to plan for the meditation. I have to find my spot for the meditation. I mean, I do transcendental meditation. I kind of manage it once a day, sometimes twice a day, but that's more on holiday. It's fantastic, but it is a journey to actually get to. I sit down, I'm already going into theta, basically. Okay, and it is where you are so caught up in your day-to-day must do, haven't done, oh my gods, right? That even just that, I call it a pause. I mean, I always think, okay, mindfulness is just that pause before snapping back. You pause and then you respond. Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as that to perhaps apply to everyday moments in your life rather than going into your Kämmerchen and try to meditate and be mindful.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Funny enough, I started with TM as well, Transcendental Meditation. And then 5 years later, and I was religious about it because I needed it so much, twice a day, 20 minutes twice a day, morning and evening, But then I found Zen, and it was so simple. It was just be. And I loved it. So anyway, that's another story. But I agree. I feel that there's kind of two sides to it. One is dedicating a bit of time every day to formally doing it. And by the way, on our app, we do 10 minutes a day. And we have this whole pathway of training. You just do one 10-minute session, and then that unlocks the next one. So you never have to choose what to do. So we think 10 minutes a day is actually enough. So what we want to have is doing it like a formal thing. I set aside the time. And 10 minutes is not that much, really. I think everybody can do that. But you just do it, The moment you think of it, do it, and or you just have it in your schedule. I'm doing it this morning, at such and such a time every morning. But then in addition, you have these little moments through the day. And we say things like, every time you're about to stand up from a chair, just pause, take one conscious breath, and then get up. Every time you're about to go through a doorway, what if you just pause, take one conscious breath, and then you step through the doorway? Like, there's little reminders that you can build in to just get the habit a little bit more embedded. I'm going to try to stay aware. That's all. And I'm not even going to ask why or whatever. I'm just going to do it. And what starts to happen is that we do get this extra dimension of our day where we're just aware. And it's kind of beautiful. It's because we don't know what we're missing when we're in the tunnel all the time and totally sucked into what I got to do and thinking about what I got to do and what I did and thinking about what I've already done and not noticing, hey, I'm being given this rich experience of being alive every waking moment.
Meditation is a fantastic tool. Your app, I think, meditation apps in general, there are quite a few out there, are tremendously helpful. First of all, they bug you. Hey, have you meditated? Hey, and yes, what you can't measure, you can't manage. And we are all about self-management, life management, kids management, husband management, whatever. So it's good to have that.
That's an important one.
It's an important one. Or wife management, in your case, potentially. But the support is another in where I asked myself, Henry, why was that so important to have it built in as a phase? Because you go like, hey, people are strong enough if they are determined enough. What about all this? Yes, you need guidance, but do you really need it continuously? Can you not just, I learned TM and then I had my self-discipline to sit down and try to work it? Do I really need to have my entire family or friends on board because I'm actually the only one that is on a spiritual path? The rest goes still to Vesper on Saturday afternoons, do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I do. Well, here's how I see it, based on my own experience and a lot of students who have worked with me. Like, it's very easy to think of mindfulness and developing awareness as a kind of private individual process. That's okay. That's one side of it. But the whole journey of the spiritual life, I believe, is finding more and more how we're just not as separate as we think we are. Not as a kind of, let me see if I can feel less separate. No, it's a discovery that really we're not as separate as we think we are. So one way that we can encourage that process of that discovery is through just recognizing the many ways that I'm not as independent as I think I am. Yeah, it's true. I have agency. I make my choices. I do have some individuality for sure. And that there's this special, unique being that I am. And that's all well and good and true. But at the same time, how different the path of my gradual development in psychology and spirituality, both, is when I can reach out, when I can be vulnerable and open up and connect and receive the support. And I see it as kind of different kinds of support. There's support that actually I am already receiving without acknowledging it. Just the very fact that I'm here alive right now, it depends on breath, air of this planet, the atmosphere of this planet. It depends on nourishment, and the food that I get. It depends on warmth. No warmth, I die, and it depends on, of course, water, liquid, no, the sustenance of the fluidity of my body and so, and then all my relationships. all my ancestors, all this great biosphere of our planet that I am totally part of, or I wouldn't exist. So just starting to recognize the degree of support that I'm already receiving, that opens something up in my heart. It's just a little chink of light, a little crack. Wow. Wow. There's a tenderness here. I'm receiving right now. And then, of course, all my immediate relationships, where I work, I'm embedded in a network of relationships within the company or the organization I work with. And that organization is embedded in a network of relationships with other organizations. And all of us are in a society, and all of us are in different nationalities. It's just like a great web. There's a great Zen teacher from Vietnam called Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a famous figure. He was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, and so on. And he's written a ton of books that people love. He died a few years ago. And he used to say that, our real nature is interbeing, that we just don't exist separately. We're all he used to say.
Yeah, you call it kind of like that you're talking about the duality, and that we are self, but we are not an independent self, we're an interdependent self. And I think that's been, since we are humans, with the prefrontal cortex, always kind of like the dichotomy between, are we stronger in a collective, or are we strong because we are here, our ego is here, our mind, our strength, and our decision-making does not depend potentially on others, but we have, as you were saying, agency. And I wondered to what extent also, your kind of book, and I say kind because it is important to kind of generate a certain vibe, is all contributing to a potential shift also in the corporate world. Let's be practical about this for a second, if I may. Is in the 80s and 90s, dog eat dog, definitely competition. Globalization was about America selling to the world. It wasn't a mutual interdependent relationships. Now we're seeing the other side of the coin. Do you think there has actually also been a shift, or should be a shift, that dog eat dog is over? Collaboration is the winning formula in order to strengthen the individual, but not by killing. Yeah. And I'm a capitalist, absolute convinced capitalist. I'm not a communist. So I'm not like, okay, we're all kumbayaing and the same, whatever. However, the collective consciousness is really important for the individual to thrive and to be well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think there's a lot of research these days showing that evolutionarily, historically, we have flourished as a species because of our capacity for collaboration and cooperation. And it's been the thing that has marked us out as this, whatever we are as a species, but we've flourished spectacularly. And it has all been through collaboration and cooperation. And we can do this thing. We learned it, like, who knows when, but way, way back, probably in the time of Homo erectus, 2 million years, 1.5 million years ago, whatever, when we got it that other people could communicate with us to help. There's a great book actually called Survival of the Friendliest, which is a kind of a history of cooperation. Historically, I mean, going way back, it's for Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthal, so showing how it was all about what he calls there's Vanessa Woods and Brian Hare. They both co-wrote the book. They call it cooperative communication, where you understand that you're like a dog understands pointing. This is the thing they say. There's a point with human development, like a baby When you point, they're just interested in the finger. And then at a certain point of development, maybe 9 months, I can't remember, they realize that when you're pointing, you're wanting them to look at something else, not the finger, where the finger's pointing. And they get that. They realize, oh, wow, this is a piece of communication that's encouraging me to it's going to help me, and so they get it. Look at the toy, look at the food, look at the something. And dogs get that as well. But chimpanzees do not. They'd never figure out. Like you can have two, overturned cups. One has got food in it and one has not. And there's, chimpanzees are very intelligent in many ways. They can get 350 words or something like that, but they can't get that if the researcher is pointing at one of these upturned cups for where the food is, it's 50-50 whether they'll get it. They just don't understand. They're being given information by the other person. They don't get it. So there's something crucial here, realizing that, wow, we can be helping each other, and we understand that somebody else has got a point of view and they're trying to communicate something to me that will help me. And I can do the same for them. So that network that we've created for human flourishing through collaboration and cooperation, it's the bedrock of our brilliance as a species. Unfortunately, we don't only have brilliance, but the brilliant side of it is spectacular what we've achieved,
It is, but at the same time, Henry, if I look around the world and geopolitically speaking, where we are right now, where are we right now?
Yeah, it's really sad. It's like this thing of dehumanization is the other side of the coin, that we've got this capacity to basically turn other people into non-human or subhuman. And the violence and the aggression and the spectacular cruelty that we're seeing in the world right now in places where we all know it's going on. And the UN has been trying to become this body that can control that, and it hasn't yet got there. I'm encouraged though in certain ways, because there was a whole long process. If you look at the history of England, it used to be ruled by warlords, kind of robber barons. And gradually in the Middle Ages, some power got centralized in London, basically, where there was an authority that could say, no, you can't just be fighting independently like that. We got a central authority. So that was an improvement in that little region, but now we need it for the world. Of course, it's not to say that Britain became a nice place. It was brutalizing the whole world in its imperial colonial history. But the UN is trying to be something analogous, where it's able to exercise, some basic human rights around the world, what countries can and can't do. And, it's calamitous seeing that some of the biggest players refuse to agree, with the way the UN has tried to curtail some of America's brutality. Anyway, it's very sad, but
Oh, it is very sad. And the reason why I'm asking you is, to write and to read your book, you go like, yes, I can do this for me, but where is the greater picture? Where does it, by knowing this, by learning this, by practicing your approach, very Zen approach to myself, but hence also to the rest of the world, what difference does it make? And I think the concept, for example, of love, I would like you to also elaborate on. You mention as something that is just part of our human existence. We are not talking about love in the, romantic sense or the physical sense. It is the love that we have in our DNA, simply because it takes us to collaboration, to getting together, to getting ahead together. Where is that concept? If you think about, certain individuals bullying billions of other people on the planet, and you just think, okay, are they just like on a level of being psychopaths that do not have this basic element of existence, love, as you explain it? What is it?
First of all, I think we need to be working at least on two fronts. One of them is individual and personal, and the other is kind of systemic. We need both. But actually, we really do need both. And so the individual work is really important. If we were able to change lots of the systems, but everybody's still motivated by personal kind of greed and fear and, and not having enoughness, and I need more, that won't work. We've actually got to do the individual personal work. I believe that. And calling it work is really, it's also beautiful. It's nice, it's not difficult work. It is difficult work, but it's also so nourishing and beautiful. And that's finding the fundamental unconditional well-being we already have, all of us. And I think it is all of us. I think what can get blocked is our access to it. But I don't think anybody doesn't really have it. I think everybody does. But sure, there's people who don't know it and don't even know that they could find it.
Yeah. And
so,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, but about the bullying individuals and the populist politicians, especially, who really like riling everybody up and turning on the hate. They're opportunists. They're opportunists. They themselves have no sense of self-love and enoughness. They've been hungry for it their whole lives, feeling unworthy all their lives, and they're narcissists. Narcissists usually are unworthy inside, and they're needing other people constantly to reflect back how great they are, to feel at all okay. They're constantly wanting to manipulate people into giving them the admiration, respect they need. So yeah, that's unfortunately there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of people at the moment who are being misled. Honestly, I think social media has a lot to do with it. I've been saying for years actually that in Europe, the invention of the printing press in the 15th or 16th century, and especially the small presses that were very accessible, easy to get, it totally destabilized Europe. It generated the witch hunts and the witch craze for hundreds of years, because people could put out little books, little pamphlets, and it just tore through European society. Some people say the English Civil War was caused by the printing press, because anybody who wanted to could put out a pamphlet, as they call it, just like a quick sheet of expressing their whatever opinions they wanted. And it's the same with social media, unfortunately. And some people say, the rise of fascism in Europe, it was the radio, the invention of the radio. Suddenly you could mass deliver your message into people's homes so easily, and with no regulation.
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to is actually the basics of collaboration, that is communication, Henry. Do you see how much tension there is? That every coin just has two sides.
Exactly.
Yeah, and communication as such is neutral, but what you do with the words, or how you express them, or who to, makes them good or bad. And to Gutenberg, a good old person, I think that was the one that invented
Right.
the press. This is fantastic. Yeah, because if the word is true, I don't want to say controlled or censored, then it's I can communicate with you wherever you are, at a speed of lightning at those times. Today we have it with X, we have it with everything. However, the sourcing of the truthfulness of the communication is, a question. But was it not always? Just remember now, if you think about all those Indian stories, when the elderly sat there and talked about the myths and the old stories of the ancestors around the fire, around the bonfire, and the children were listening. I think generation after generation, there was a nice evolution of the story from almost being unrecognizable. So I think there are certain elements in our society, human being, communication, and even collaboration that will be always at odds and to be managed.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, I guess I would say that, the whole thing comes back to these two sides of our human nature. The one which is collaborative and cooperative and loving and caring and sharing, and the other that is not, that is easily turned into dehumanization,
Yes.
and hate and violence and aggression and brutality, cruelty.
Yes. Yes.
So it's like, what does the communication encourage? What does it nourish? Is it the beautiful side, or is it the dark side? And what do we do to defuse the dark side? Because there's a wisdom. I once read somewhere that indigenous wisdom tends to spend a lot of time calling out the shadow, the darkness. It doesn't, because if you only talk about the good, it's not right. You got to defuse the dark. So, when religions that just say, we've got the light, actually, they're not as wise as the ones that say, hey, yeah, there is light and there's dark. And we need to be aware of what's dark and destructive in us. What really is unhelpful in us that we actually have within ourselves, what Jung called the shadow. We got to do shadow work. Well, actually, there's a whole side to the meditation journey that I go into in the book as well, that is about finding the shadow. It's about finding what we find difficult and learning to be with it, and not pretend it's not there, but to actually welcome that as well,
And I think this is so fundamental. I think it's so fundamental to, as you say, to recognize it and be with it instead of managing it away or avoiding it in general, because it doesn't dissolve. It actually just grows, even though one says, well, whatever you focus on becomes bigger, but also whatever you try to totally ignore will sooner or later knock at the door.
Exactly.
And we'll come back with a vengeance. And so this constant vigilance is actually what makes a human different, perhaps, to an animal. We can be vigilant about our thoughts, about our emotions, about our not being reactive but responsive. And this is where, the good side we're need to work and manage. And what you were saying early on, which I loved, is, where we are just the side that is aggressive and wants to just kill. Well, it's the evolution of the brain. It's the evolution. It really is just how we used to be, is still within us. Full stop.
Yes.
The shadow is there.
Exactly. And I love what you're saying, because also I would say that, like, the kind of awareness that we're discovering and encouraging and nourishing, that kind of awareness is open to both sides, to all of it. It's not only open to, what we think of as good, it precisely knows how to be with what's hard and difficult and dark and potentially dangerous. It knows how to be with it. It doesn't banish it. It just, and that's the great way to defuse it, actually, to make it less hazardous, to make ourselves less of a danger to others, is to know and be with and kind of allow and welcome what's dark in us.
Yeah, and allowing and being with, sitting with yourself in the mud, as some people call it, is actually a beautiful thing. It is not comfortable, but being outside of the comfort zone is also, spurring growth. Absorption. Because we have absorption and awakening. I definitely would like to, discuss with you, Henry, for our viewers and listeners. Now, absorption, I thought I can relate to it because I meditate, okay? Somebody that doesn't necessarily meditate, how do they need to see not only what absorption is, and perhaps you could give us a definition how you would describe it, but also what the benefit of absorption could be?
Yeah. Okay. So this is almost like a bit of a technical term, absorption. And I think of it in meditation, they sometimes call it samadhi. They also sometimes call it jhana. And, they can both be kind of translated more or less as absorption. But maybe the more common terminology is flow states. It's basically when, you know, many of us will have tasted flow states, like a time when we're really absorbed in an activity. It could be something, like athletic. It could be riding a bike. It could be, at the gym. It could be going for a run. It could be in a sport, basketball, baseball, football, whatever, where we suddenly get it's like getting in the zone, when suddenly it's weirdly effortless and it feels good and it feels fulfilling, and often we seem to be doing it better than we think we normally can. When you're writing, or when suddenly a little switch, a gear changes in the brain, and suddenly it's very easy to keep writing. It sort of flows. Or if you're a musician and you're playing, and suddenly weirdly one day you just play that piece better than you normally do, and it feels so good. That's a flow state, and it's part of our, again, it's part of our evolutionary wiring that we can get into flow. It's a beautiful state of mind. So here's the thing: when it comes to meditation and mindfulness, we can find flow in meditation. So somebody might be, familiar with sitting down and being still, and yeah, it's a bit of a grind. Their minds jumping around, and that's how it often is. And I find that I get a bit frustrated. I don't find it very easy. But then one day you sit down to do it, and you just go into this place of great peace, great attentiveness and awareness, and a strange kind of energy, and it just feels so good. So that's flow in meditation. And if we do meditation regularly, it'll start to show up more and more. And it's very good for us. It's very refreshing. It's very restorative. And there's research done there was a famous researcher into flow called Csikszentmihalyi at the University of Chicago in the 70s, 80s, 90s. He wrote some great books on flow and did a lot of research. And he found that people who get flow more in their lives are just happier. They report more satisfaction with life and more happiness because it feels so good. And and what I love about it, both in meditation actually and in any activity, is that it's like we're getting something. It's almost like we get something for nothing. We're not, it's not because we're having a sumptuous, expensive meal. It's not because we're in an opera house, with an expensive ticket and an amazing show. There's so many resources are going into. We're just kind of doing ordinary stuff, and if it's meditation, we're just doing nothing really, and we can still get it. But, the more we get it, the more we will get it in ordinary things. Like you can get it washing the dishes. You can get it unloading the dishwasher, or things that you think you don't really like doing. Like I've got to say, when I still get this, if there's dirty dishes and I open up the dishwasher and it's full of clean stuff, it's like, but I can turn that around and say, okay, the next 5 minutes, I'm going to enjoy this unloading process, and I can enjoy it. And it's like a little bit of being carried by an activity. That's what flow is a bit like. And it's a sweet thing to have more of in life. And like I said, it doesn't require lots of externals. That's one of the great things about it. So I think it's a really important sort of fruit of meditating.
Yeah, no, I
Call out.
absolutely adore that, Henry, because I just think it is very much, flow is just when you are lost in yourself, in the sense that you are absorbed indeed, in the activity, and you are with it. And, I am, from my personal experience, I love, doing whatever I do and always have a podcast on, always having something I'm listening to that is teaching me something I'm drilling down on. I'm discovering, studying. But I just said, Patricia, this is great, but are you actually in the moment unloading the dishwasher, cooking my meal or doing whatever, I'm putting my makeup on? And because I grew up to be extremely efficient and productive 24/7 if I can, all right?
Yeah.
Meaning that if I can, broaden my horizon, listening to an interesting conversation whilst I'm putting my makeup on, that's great. But even my daughter, who's, not even 20, says, Mommy, you need to enjoy the process of putting your makeup on. And she's totally Zen about it. I always laugh at her. I'm like, she says, no, I enjoy the process. I'm like, nah, I just want the result. Give me 5 minutes. And, it's the result that counts. And her mindset is very different. Don't know whether it's a personal thing or whether it's her generation, but I don't know. But she really, truly is a lot more Zen. And I have to kind of rediscover the love and falling in love in the trance. I study hypnotherapy. So the trance, every daydreaming is a trance. What you just, described, unloading the dishwasher with a sense of awareness and love. Hey, these are my dishes, which are going to, be there for my food, which then going to, nourish me, is a loving process potentially. Unless, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, I'm just trying to get rid of another thing I have to do during the day.
I don't know how to put this, but I feel like you're one of the people with the unfair advantage kind of thing because you meditate. So you already know about this. So if you want to, I think you get a pass if you want to do it. If you want to do these activities while also listening, honestly,
Okay,
if you
that's a
enjoy it
lot
that
of
way,
credit.
I think that's cool.
I love it. Awakening. Let's talk about awakening, Henry,
Ah,
because we are already over our time, and I know it's super precious, something we can't get back, contrarian to money, or sometimes even lovers, you can get those back, but time we can't. So I know how precious it is. But awakening,
yeah.
tell, and everybody says, yeah, great awakening. So what? I'm awake. I got up at 5 o'clock this morning, and I've got still stuff to do. Um,
Yeah.
Tell us about awakening, what it is, how we can
Yeah.
get it, and why we should actually, strive for it to have a better day-to-day reality.
Yeah. Okay. This is great that let me just say, I'll try to say just a real couple of things about it. The awakening in the sense, because there's a lot of meanings of the word awakening, of course, but in the sense that it's meant in these deep wisdom traditions, like Zen, like Buddhism, like Hinduism and contemplation, the deep meaning of it is something like this. It's suddenly realizing that not as an idea, but as an actual experience, that I am not separate from anything. It's a sudden discovery. And most people have had some kind of glimpse or glimmer or little shiver or shimmer of a sense of this. It's a sudden, and it'll be a very special moment, like some moment that happened in your childhood, that happened when you were a youth or young, or yesterday, maybe, when you felt a strange, life felt different. Suddenly there was a kind of blessed feeling, there was a stillness. Somehow things seemed perfect, and you can't exactly say why. Those are all little hints of awakening. It's a real shift from I'm stuck in my tight little tunnel of my life, you know, and suddenly that separate little channel of me has just blown open. And it's like I'm connected everywhere. It can be, it's a very beautiful thing. And usually when someone has an awakening moment, it's a rare thing. It may be a few times in life, a real strong awakening moment, blowing open like that. But we can actually have a sense of it that's not so strong, but it's there more commonly. So I'm trying to, in the app as well as the book, I'm wanting to say, hey, this is a real human possibility. And yeah, traditionally it's been in the province of deep traditions of you got to go and join a monastery or temple or be a hermit or stuff. But it's human. It's not really special. It's beautiful, but all of us have kind of, in the same way we've been talking about, really, have kind of already got it. It's just a matter of whether we want to notice it more, And so I think I think it's a beautiful thing to know that it's a real fact of our human life. It's not just a kind of special idea. And it's also not a religious thing, actually. It's a real, it's part of our very consciousness is actually. And so
yeah, sorry.
go ahead, please. Yeah.
No, because I'm following you, and it is these moments that we call like the moments of happiness that strike us, sorry, and we don't even know why am I feeling so good all of a sudden? Why didn't I feel good yesterday when I, somebody said something nice, and I'm like, yes, thank you, but today I feel this contentness of just being.
Yes.
And these moments that we may classify and that are very, they're like little drops from time to time. They happen. Sometimes they come out of nowhere, and you don't know what triggered them. Hence, the only thing that might be the trigger, I guess, is yourself. But something I wanted to pick up on, and that is something on your book, in your book, talking about, you find your true self. You meditate, you go deep, you find your true self. Now, for somebody saying, yeah, but I don't know whether I recognize my true self. And the way I grew up was that you form very much, or you find out your true self, not somewhere, almost hibernating in the woods. Yeah. But you find who you are, what you need, what you want, what you can give, always by rubbing yourself, not violently, but in society, with experience, with communication, with arguments, with just living life.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's like we can be constantly, realizing that one thing doesn't feel quite right, but we're going to learn from it. We're going to learn from that rubbing up against something. Something else brings us to life. We're energized. We feel really good. So we follow the hints to finding our true self. And we know when we're on track because we just get this energy that's different. We feel deep down good. Yeah, this is what I love. This is what really lights me up. So that's a hint that that's what your deeper self is really interested in. And often also actually sadnesses, losses, griefs, catastrophes, in our lives can open it up more because they strip away the shallower stuff. They take us, heartbreak, I always think we don't wish it on anybody, but it's going to come anyway. And when our hearts break, actually it's an opportunity because they're so much more open. That's when we can touch a tenderness. And I think, in a way, that's the deepest form of this original love. That's where we really find it deep down, and is in awakening, like really letting go of the less deep sides of ourselves in our life, which we want as well, really. But sometimes they just go, and we're just in the deepest of the deep. And it can be very painful if it's caused by some loss and heartbreak. But then in that deep place, there's the deepest love. And we really can discover an unconditional belonging, that we belong to this universe, you know.
If you look back on your life, pivotal moments that brought you where you are right now, we are a result of whatever our decisions were in the past. That's just that's a fact of life, I guess.
Yes.
But what would you say are the three most important points, messages, or even like, let's say, tips for our viewers that they can put into practice, consider at least right now, to open up to the possibility, be kind of kind, and just allow even to just enter the path that you suggest in the book?
Yeah, okay. So if I link it to points in my own life, there was one when I was 19 years old. I had a random awakening experience out of nowhere with no interest in spirituality at all. I just was studying what I was experiencing in one moment, and suddenly I just kind of discovered I was not separate from anything. That was critical. So that was the happiest I'd ever been. And it was, so I would encourage everybody to think to the rare moments of supreme happiness you've known, that maybe it was not conditional on anything, and trust it, you know. And then also I grew up with quite a lot of trauma. Actually, I had a very serious skin condition right through my childhood. I was sometimes hospitalized for it, and a very, very difficult parental divorce situation that was very painful. And now I'm really grateful for those difficulties, because they required me to dig deep and search and be on a journey. And I still feel, you know, the sorrows of that boy I was are still in me, and they make me stay open to loving myself and others. And so the third thing is just having a really difficult, one of my close and most beloved people going through something very, very difficult, truly heartbreaking, you know, and how I've had to expand. My heart has had to expand in order to stay open, so that I can be with this dearly beloved person suffering and not close off to it. And I'm so grateful that I have learned to be open-hearted and stay in the love, because that's really, I think that's where I want to be. I want to be in contact with my own capacity for love, unconditional love.
Mm. And that is in painful moments as well as in beautiful moments. And perhaps this moment of just allowing to be without thriving, the letting go of the shoulds and should nots, is maybe the first step that everybody can take away also from our conversation. And this book, I think what you've just said is a beautiful closure. So original love, the 4 Ns on the path of awakening. And, you know, I think our society, the way it is so much lacking value, so much abusing the concept of love, or just, I don't know, consuming, not abusing, but consuming the concept of love rather than actually living it, that they might come across the title and go like, what is this all about? But I think your book is fantastic, very much needed maybe in the current zeitgeist and where we are. I love The Way. The app is called The Way. just to recap for our viewers, where is the best way, or what is the best way to find you, to find out more about you, about your writings, your poems, and also the fundamental work you do as a Zen master, Zen teacher?
There's The Way, thewayapp.com, and there's henryshukman.com, where you can find access to all the things I'm doing, and the various in-person and online things we also offer.
Fantastic. Henry, thank you so much for the book, for being with us here on the Pause. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Could have gone on for another couple of hours. Got a stack of questions waiting here, perhaps for the next time. Thank you so much.
Patricia, thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, my dear On the Pulse community. It's been another fantastic conversation. Henry Shukman, I think, is definitely one of the kind. We didn't get too deep into his personal history. There's a lot out there if you want to research it. A truly incredible journey. So he does speak from experience, and the true motivation of really saying, hey, it is possible. It was possible for me, so it is possible for you and for the collective. Have a look. Thank you for being with us here, and I see you at the next conversation. Give us a like if you like, and join us as a subscriber. See you soon. Bye.
Together, go out there. Together, we begin to share. Together, we find our way.